So you've just gotten a shiny, brand new book idea, or maybe you've had one for a while. Now what? Most writers, most kingdom writers make the mistake of skipping straight into the writing process, only to have their book fall apart 3 chapters in. In this video, we're talking about the critical step in the writing process that you need to take in order to have the best chance at finishing your book. Hey, y'all, welcome to today's Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa, and I create videos that help you learn how to write and live God's way. If you want to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. Every week, we partner with Our Given Purpose Ministries, which is an incredible ministry founded by my dear friend Tori Slaughter to help you grow in your walk with God and get plugged into godly community. So make sure you follow them as well. So if I were to ask you what would be the first step in the writing process once you get your writing idea, many people would probably say, just start writing. Just start, grab a pen and paper or your handy dandy laptop or desktop and just start typing away. Just start writing away and just get started. Just dive right in. But I actually believe that is one of the biggest mistakes that many writers make. And the reason why is because they are missing a critical step known as brainstorming. And brainstorming is it's not the flashiest thing that we do in the writing process. It's not always the most exciting, but it is a critical part of the writing process. And today we're going to break down why. What is it that makes brainstorming so important? And what is it that writers miss when they skip this step? So first, let's talk about what brainstorming is. What does it really mean? Just put simply, brainstorming is the act of generating ideas for any book you're working on. It's as simple as that. The idea is really to focus on getting out as many ideas as quickly as possible. This is not about refining or tweaking or editing or anything like that. This is just purely getting your ideas out. And it helps you expand on the book idea that you have. Many times when we get an idea as kingdom writers, that idea is kind of vague. It's pretty general. We might have some details. We might have the main focus, the main subject. If we're writing a novel, we might have a few characters or maybe a setting, but we don't have a lot of the details. And so brainstorming helps us to flesh all of those details out. It helps us to expand on the original idea that we have. And it's so important for us to do that because this allows us to actually have the potential to get momentum during the drafting process because it gives us something to work with. If we just start with our idea and we haven't worked on it, we haven't developed it, we haven't expanded it and really tried to get the most out of it, and we just jump right into writing, we can easily get stuck. We can wind up kind of like we've painted ourselves into a corner and we don't know where the book is supposed to go. We don't know where the story is supposed to go. We don't know how we really solve the problem that we're trying to solve for our readers. And it can be easy to get stuck. We're just kind of meandering with the story. And so brainstorming helps us avoid a lot of these issues. So now that we've identified what brainstorming is, let's talk about why so many writers skip this process, why they don't really, put a lot of time and effort into it. One of the reasons I believe that many writers skip the brainstorming process is because they truly don't know how important it is. They think back to those days when they maybe wrote essays in school or the last time that they had to tackle some type of writing project that they did, maybe for work or something like that. And brainstorming may not have been a part of that process. They may have never actually engaged in active brainstorming. And so they may think that it's just not something that's necessary or that it's just slowing them down. And so many writers will skip it because they don't realize that it matters, that it makes a big difference in terms of you having that momentum when you start drafting. And so drafting for many writers feels like that first natural step. It feels like the thing they're supposed to jump in and do right away. And so when they don't have the forward momentum that they're looking for, they get confused about what went wrong. And so, again, brainstorming is necessary. It is so important in terms of helping you get on the right foot with the drafting process. But again, many writers skip brainstorming because they don't realize that it makes a big difference. Another reason that writers often skip the brainstorming process is because they don't think that it feels that productive. It doesn't feel like it's doing a lot of good or that it's really helpful for them. It doesn't feel as productive as drafting does. For many of us who either if you're new to writing or you're writing your first book, you're writing for the first time, and you're learning about the writing process, you may feel like brainstorming is kind of a waste of time, that it's slowing you down, that it's not really, it doesn't give you that same burst of energy that drafting does. When you're looking at that document and the ideas are flowing and you're just jumping right in, that can feel exciting. It can give you that boost of energy that you're looking for. But brainstorming feels a little bit more technical sometimes. It feels like something that we have to muddle through, and it may not feel as interesting or as exciting. And so we sometimes will shy away from that part of the process because drafting feels like you feel like more of a writer when you're drafting, when you're thinking about the writing process, maybe when you've thought about what writers do when they work on movies, when you see them in movies or on TV shows, and you see the writer who's maybe writing in a cabin or at their desk, and they're, typing at the computer or writing by hand, and you have that picture in your mind of what a writer does, what that actually looks like. Many of us don't think about brainstorming. We don't think about putting our ideas out there and then sorting through them and putting them all together. That doesn't come into our imagination when we think about what writers actually do. And so we skip it because it doesn't feel like it's really a part of the process. It feels like it's not really the important work of writing. But that couldn't be further from the truth. While brainstorming doesn't feel as exciting, maybe, as drafting does, it lays a valuable foundation for your book that makes the drafting process so much easier. I can't tell you how many times I have gone through my own writing journey and had different things I was working on, and I would skip the brainstorming process and just jump right into writing. And I didn't understand why I would get stuck weeks or months later, and I just felt like I was going in circles and didn't know where the story was supposed to go. And so I understand that frustration and not knowing how you got there. And brainstorming for so many writers, it helps us avoid those pitfalls. It helps us avoid getting stuck and not knowing where the book is supposed to go, because we've already created a source of ideas and a source of material to draw from. We've already laid a framework for what we want our book to do. And brainstorming is a key part of what allows us to do that. That's why it's so important in the writing process, and we cannot skip that step. Now, we've talked about why a lot of writers skip the brainstorming process and what causes them to do that. But now let's talk about what the brainstorming process actually does for your book and why, again, it's so important. So first of all, brainstorming can potentially help you avoid hundreds and hundreds of wasted pages and hours of time, because you're spending all of this time on unnecessary rewrites. Here's why. It's a lot of times, if we don't go through the process of brainstorming, then we get stuck with our work over and over again. And we end up, in the worst case scenario, we can end up doing all of this writing, all of this creating, spending all of this time on our book and on our story, only to find that we end up needing to scrap a lot of it because it wasn't actually the book we wanted to write. We can end up writing 2 or even 3 or more books in one. And our book just ends up all over the place. We don't solve the problem for our readers that we intended to solve in the beginning. We don't tell the story with the type of characters and setting that we intended to tell at the beginning. We end up in a different place than we expected. And a lot of that comes because we didn't take the time to really fully develop our ideas and flesh them out and identify which ideas we were going to keep and which ones we were going to remove from this particular book. And so there's a process that we have to go through with our writing journey in order to get our book where we want it to go. And if we skip that brainstorming step, we can end up wasting a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of creativity creating things that we may not end up actually using. Now, the good news about the writing process is that nothing is ever really wasted. Whenever we write and we create, we can always use the experience that we gain from writing and from creating, and we may be able to use those other ideas for other books in the future. But at the same time, I think many of us want to get through that writing process as quickly as possible. And so if we can avoid a lot of meandering, a lot of wandering, and a lot of frustration in the process, I think we want to do that. I know I do. So we want to avoid that wasted time and those wasted pages if we can. Brainstorming can also help you avoid writer's block. Again, not knowing where your book or where your story is going, not knowing what solution you offer for your readers, and not knowing how you're going to get there. And so a lot of the writer's block that people experience is because they haven't developed their ideas, they haven't taken time to brainstorm, and they don't really know what kind of book they're actually writing and what kind of story they're telling. And so that's important as well. We can avoid a lot of frustration from writer's block simply by brainstorming. Also, brainstorming can help us avoid falling into procrastination. This is a big one as well. Many times, if we get frustrated in the writing process because we've experienced writer's block and because we have wasted all this time and energy writing 3 different stories instead of one, we start procrastinating. We start putting the book off until later and saying, I don't want to deal with it right now. I don't really want to work on it that much. I want to do something else that feels less draining. How many of you have been there? I know I have. And so a lot of times the procrastination starts to happen because we haven't done the necessary work up front. And how sad is that, right? To have all of these different issues compound on top of each other. The writer's block and the frustration leads to procrastination and more frustration. And so we don't want to have to deal with any of that if we don't have to. Brainstorming is one key thing that helps us avoid all of those issues. So let's talk about what that means and what that looks like. One key takeaway that I want you to remember from this live today is that drafting is actually the process of telling the story. It may seem obvious, but this is really the reality of it, and the logistics of it is you are telling the story when you're drafting. But brainstorming is when you explore the story. It's when you explore your ideas, when you really sit back and think through what it is that you want to do, what it is that you want to say, who do you want to reach, what is the perspective you're coming from. Brainstorming is when we find out what kind of book we're actually writing, when we figure out the destination that we're trying to get to. Drafting is just the process of traveling there. It's the process of getting the ideas out and making sure that we're on the right path that we have charted out. And if we make some changes in the process, that's okay. But we want to make sure that we have an idea of where we're going before we start the journey. And brainstorming is how we get started with that. So, I want to share my own personal process of brainstorming, and I want to give you a sense of what my brainstorming process looks like. I use a technique called mind mapping. And that is where you take a piece of paper, or there's a lot of software that can help you through the process of mind mapping. And you take a piece of paper and you start writing down your ideas, and you put your main idea usually in the center of it, or you might write it up across the top. And you just start writing all the different ideas around it. And it starts to look like all these little bubbles that show up. Many of you may be familiar with the process of mind mapping already, but I have found it to be particularly helpful in my own writing process. And so I wanted to share that with you as an idea to help you get started with brainstorming, because for me, I have found it to be especially helpful in the writing process, especially if you're a visual thinker and you need to have all of your ideas laid out in front of you. Mind mapping can be especially helpful. So I want to let you know that I will be releasing a resource later on this year that will go into even more depth about what the brainstorming process can look like. And I share with you several different types of brainstorming in that process, in that resource. And it will walk you through in detail what it looks like to do each of those processes and what are the different pros and cons of each technique. So it gives you a lot of different ideas about how brainstorming works, and again, what makes it so helpful in the writing process. So it will really set you up for success in your own writing journey with whatever books you are working on. So I want to let you know that you can click the link in the description to find out more about this resource that will be coming to you soon, and you'll have the chance to sign up and get on my mailing list and to download a free resource that is already available to you now. It is my free masterclass, which is the 5 biggest mistakes that writers make and how to avoid them. The 5 biggest mistakes that writers make and how to avoid them. And we cover a lot of ground, even from what I've discussed today, what I've talked about with why brainstorming is important and why we shouldn't skip it. I touch on some of those ideas in the masterclass, but I go a lot more in depth on why we need to avoid these common mistakes as writers and what can happen when we do and how we can set ourselves up for success. So make sure you click the link in the description to find out more about the course that will be coming soon to walk you through the different stages of the writing process, and to get that free masterclass that will help you out and help you avoid those critical mistakes in the writing process. So that is it for today's Live with Lisa. I hope that it helped you and gave you some insight on why brainstorming is so important in your own writing journey, and helped encourage you to really get started with your own process. And so I will see you in the next live stream, same time next week, right here on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And that is it for today. I will see you in the next live stream. And let me check comments here before I head out. Okay. And so, yeah, thank y'all so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next live stream. Until then, take care, God bless, and happy writing, y'all.